I wasn't expecting anything unusual when I walked into the clinic that day, just a routine checkup. Nothing more. But when the nurse came into the room, her eyes lingered a little too long, and the air between us shifted. I was sitting in the sterile, cold exam room, the kind where the walls are an uncomfortable shade of white, and everything smells faintly of antiseptic. It had been a routine checkup. Nothing special, just something I'd put off for far too long. The nurse had come in earlier, friendly and professional, telling me to wait for the doctor. I wasn't exp in anything out of the ordinary, just the usual questions and a quick exam before I'd be on my way. But when she returned to the room after a few minutes, something about the air between us shifted. She was young, maybe in her mid-20s, with sharp eyes and an easy smile that had felt welcoming when I first walked in now. Though as she came back to finish her notes, her expression seemed more focused, her gaze flickering over me in a way that made my skin prickle with awareness. I wasn't sure if it was just my imagination, but I could have sworn she was watching me more intently than before. "All right," she said, her voice soft but clear. "We just need to check a few more things, and then you'll be all set." I nodded, trying to play it cool, though I could feel a strange tension building in the room, one that wasn't there before she came closer, standing beside the exam table, her fingers lightly brushing my arm as she moved to take my pulse. The touch was innocent enough, but it lingered just a second too long enough to send a strange jolt of awareness through me. I caught her looking at me, a subtle shift in her expression, and I wondered if she felt it too. That quiet spark hanging in the air between us. "Go ahead and unbutton your pants," she said after a moment, her voice still calm, though there was something different in it now, something I couldn't quite place. I hesitated for just a second, not expecting this part of the exam to be so personnel, but I did as she asked it slowly, undoing the button and sliding down the zipper. My heart started to beat faster, not from nerves about the exam itself, but because I could feel her eyes on me the whole time. There was something about the way she was looking at me that made the air feel thicker, made my pulse race in ways I hadn't expected. I shifted on the table, unsure of how to react, but when I glanced up, her eyes were locked on mine again, and this time there was no mistaking the change in her expression. She seemed intrigued, almost curious, and as her gaze flicked down to where my pants were now slightly open, I felt a shiver run through me. Her fingers brushed my skin again, light and careful, but the touch sent a wave of heat rushing through me. "I'll just check here," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper now, and there was something about the way she said it, something softer, more intimate. She was still professional, at least outwardly, but the air between us was charged now, thick with something unspoken. She leaned in closer, and I could feel her breath on my skin, warm and gentle. Her fingers worked carefully, adjusting my clothing just enough to expose the area she needed to examine, but as she did, her hand brushed against me in a way that didn't feel entirely clinical. My breath caught in my throat, my pulse quickening as I tried to remain still, but it was getting harder with every passing second. The closeness, the warmth of her body near mine, it was all becoming too much, and I could feel a slow burn of anticipation. Building inside me, her eyes flicked up to meet mine again, and for a long moment neither of us said a word. The silence stretched out between us, heavy and charged with an intensity that neither of us seemed to want to acknowledge, but it was there. Undeniable, hang in the air like a question neither of us dared to ask. "You're tense," she said softly, her hand resting lightly on my thigh. Now her touch gentle but firm. "It's okay, just relax." Her words were soothing, but there was an undercurrent to them, something that made my heart race even faster. I nodded, though relaxing was the last thing I could do with the way she was looking at me, the way her touch lingered longer than it should have. I couldn't help the way my body responded, and as her hand moved slightly, brushing against me again, I felt a surge of heat that I knew she noticed. Her breath hitched, just slightly, and her gaze dropped to where my pants were still partially undone, her lips parting as if she was about to say something, but she didn't. Instead, she hesitated for a moment, her hand still resting on my leg, her fingers tracing light patterns on my skin. I'm just going to check, she whispered, her voice barely audible now, as if she wasn't entirely sure if she was talking to herself or to me. Her hand moved slowly, carefully, but the touch was anything but clinical. Now I could feel the warmth of her palm against my skin, the way her fingers brushed lightly over the fabric of my underwear, and I couldn't stop the soft exhale that escaped me. The sensation was overwhelming the room, suddenly feeling too small, too intimate, as if the walls were closing in around us. My breathing shallow, and I could feel the tension between us thickening with every second she didn't pull away. Instead, her touch grew bolder, her fingers lingering as she adjusted the waistband of my underwear, her movements slow and deliberate. I watched her, unable to tear my eyes away, and when her gaze flicked up to meet mine again, there was no mistaking the desire in her eyes. "This isn't typical," she said softly, almost as if she was trying to reassure herself, but her hand didn't stop moving, her touch growing more confident as she continued to explore the exposed skin beneath her fingertips. I swallowed hard, my body reacting to her touch in ways I couldn't control. "No," I managed to whisper, my voice rough, thick with the tension that had been building between us. "It's not for a moment." Neither of us moved. The air between us was thick, heavy with the weight of everything that was happening, everything that was about to happen. And then, as if a decision had been made, without either of us saying a word, she leaned in even closer, her lips just inches from mine. I could feel her breath on my skin, warm and soft, and the anticipation was almost unbearable. Her hand moved again this time, more purposefully, her fingers brushing against me in a way that made my whole body tense with need. I couldn't hold back the soft groan that escaped me, my breath coming in short, shallow bursts as I tried to stay still, but it was impossible. The way she was touching me, the way her gaze held mine, it was all too much, and I could feel myself losing control. "You're responding well," she whispered, her voice soft, but filled with a kind of intensity that made my heart race even faster. "Just relax." I tried, I really did, but the way her hand moved against me, the way her fingers pressed just a little harder, a little more insistently, it was impossible to stay still. My body arched slightly, responding to her touch without my permission, and I could feel the heat pooling in my stomach, a slow burn that was becoming impossible to ignore. Her lips brushed against my ear, her breath hot and teasing, and I could feel her hand sliding lower, pressing against me, in a way that made me gasp. "You like this?" She murmured, her voice barely more than a breath now, and I could hear the smile in her words, the confidence in her tone. I couldn't speak, I couldn't think. All I could do was feel her hand, her breath, the overwhelming heat of the moment. I nodded, barely able to manage the movement, my whole body trembling with anticipation. She was so close, so careful, and yet so deliberate, her touch driving me to the edge of something I didn't know how to pull back from. She leaned in even closer, her lips brushing against my jaw as her hand moved more insistently, her fingers tracing slow, deliberate patterns across my skin. My breathing grew ragged, my body responding to her every touch, and I could feel myself unraveling beneath her hands. "I've wanted to do this since you walked in." She whispered, her lips so close to mine that I could feel the words against my skin. "Since the moment I saw you." Her confession sent a thrill through me, and I couldn't stop myself from leaning into her, my lips brushing against hers in a kiss that was soft, at first hesitant, but quickly deepened, as the desire between us boiled over. Her hand didn't stop moving, her touch sending waves of heat through me, and I could feel the tension in the room building to a breaking point. We were lost in each other now, in the heat of the moment, in the overwhelming intensity of the desire that had been building between us from the very beginning. Her lips met mine again, this time with a hunger that sent a wave of heat through my entire body. The kiss deepened quickly, her hand still exploring, her touch becoming more insistent. My pulse raced as I leaned into her, pulling her closer. Feeling the warmth of her body pressed against mine, the sterile clinical atmosphere of the room faded away, replaced by the intoxicating closeness that had enveloped us. The undeniable connection growing with every second, her breath was ragged as her lips moved from my mouth to my neck, leaving a trail of soft, heated kisses that made my skin tingle. My hands found her waist, pulling her tighter against me, unable to resist the pull between us. Every touch, every movement felt like a promise, an unspoken desire that neither of us had anticipated, but both of us were giving. Into completely, I shouldn't be doing this. She whispered against my skin, but there was no hesitation in her voice, no sign that she actually wanted to stop her words. Only made the moment feel more intense, as if we were crossing a line neither of us could ever come back from, and I couldn't hold back anymore. Her hand moved lower, brushing over me with a touch that was both gentle and electrifying, making me gasp. Softly, every inch of my skin felt alive under her hands, every nerve ending on fire as her fingers traced slow, deliberate paths, teasing me, testing me. The anticipation was unbearable, every second stretching out as the tension built, and I could feel the heat between us growing even more intense. "You're making this so hard to resist." I murmured, my voice low and rough. Barely able to form the words, I felt her smile against my neck, her breath warm and soft against my skin, as she continued her slow, deliberate exploration of my body. "I'm not trying to resist anymore, whispered her voice, thick with need, and the weight of her words hung between us, sealing the moment. There was no going back now, only forward deeper into the desire that had taken over us both. Her fingers grazed the waistband of my underwear, lingering there for just a moment as if waiting for a sign permission to go further. I met her eyes, dark and filled with the same raw intensity that was coursing through my veins, with a nod. I let her know it was okay, that I wanted this, needed this, as much as she did the moment she moved lower, her fingers brushing against me. I felt a shock of electricity run through me, my body responding instantly to her touch. My breath caught in my throat. I was sure she could hear it. She moved with a confidence that made my head spin. Her fingers skilled, deliberate, sending wave after wave of pleasure through me. My hands tightened on her waist, pulling her even closer as I leaned into her, unable to control the way my body was. Responding to her touch, the air between us was thick with anticipation, every breath heavy, every second charged with the weight of what we were doing. I could feel her pulse quickening beneath my fingertips, matching the rapid beat of my own heart as the intensity between us grew. "You're driving me crazy," I whispered. My voice strained, but she only smiled, her lips grazing my ear as her fingers continued their slow, agonizingly perfect rhythm. She knew exactly what she was doing, and it was impossible to think of anything else but the sensation of her hands on me, the way her body felt pressed against mine. "Good," she whispered, her voice breathless, and I could hear the pleasure in her tone, the satisfaction she took in the way I was reacting to her. Her lips moved back to mine, claiming another deep, heated kiss that left me breathless. My entire body trembling under the intensity of it all, I could feel myself losing control, the slow, steady burn building into something overwhelming. Every touch, every kiss, pushed me closer to the edge, and I could sense that she knew it too. Her fingers moved with more urgency now, her body pressed even tighter against mine. And I knew that we were both lost in this moment in each other, the intensity of her touch, the way her lips explored my skin, the soft sounds of her breath against me. It was all too much. My body responded to her, completely giving in to the heat, to the undeniable desire that had overtaken us both. I could feel the tension coiling tighter and tighter inside me, ready to snap, and I knew I was close. So close, her lips found my ear again, her voice barely more than a whisper as she said, "Let go, I want to feel it." Her words were all it took. With a soft groan, I felt the tension inside me snap, waves of pleasure crashing over me as I gave in completely to the moment. To her, my whole body trembled, every muscle tightening as I surrendered to the intensity of it all. my breath coming in short, sharp bursts as the sensation overwhelmed me. She held me close through it all, her fingers still moving gently, coaxing me through the release, her lips pressing soft kisses to my neck, my cheek, my lips. I could feel her breath warm and steady as she whispered soft words of reassurance, her body pressed tightly against mine. As I came down from the high, the room felt still. Now the air between us filled with a quiet intimacy that hadn't been there before, my skin tingling with the remnants of pleasure as I leaned back against the table, trying to catch my breath. She stayed close, her hands resting gently on my chest, her eyes meeting mine with a softness that made my chest tighten. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. The silence between us comfortable now filled with the weight of what had just happened. What we had shared there was no need for words, no need to explain what had transpired between us. It was something we both understood without saying a thing, a connection that had gone beyond anything either of us had anticipated I shouldn't have. She started her voice soft, hesitant, but I shook my head, silent in her with a gentle touch. I don't regret a thing, I said quietly, and it was true despite the situation, despite everything. I couldn't bring myself to regret what had just happened, the way she had made me feel. Her eyes softened, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips as she leaned in, pressing one last soft kiss to my lips. Neither do I, she whispered, and with that the tension that had filled the room before dissolved, completely replaced by a warmth that settled between us, unspoken but understood. As we stood there, still close, still connected, I knew that something had changed between us, something that couldn't be undone.